People always say love finds you when you least expect it. That's what I told myself when Ethan came into my life. I was working double shifts at a local diner, just trying to get by. 3 kids, 1 deadbeat ex, and barely enough money to keep the lights on. I was tired, physically, emotionally. When Ethan sat at my counter for the first time, smiled, and actually listened, it felt like someone had finally seen me. He was charming, no doubt. Always quick with a joke, always telling me how strong I was. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," he said one night as I packed up leftover cornbread for my kids. "You deserve better." He moved in fast, literally and figuratively. At first I was grateful. He helped with the kids, picked them up from school when I worked late. He cooked, cleaned, bought groceries. For a while it felt like I'd finally caught a break. But then the cracks started showing. He began questioning where I was going, who I talked to, how long I spent at the store. He'd go through my phone, demand passwords, get upset when I didn't respond fast enough. It wasn't yelling at first, just cold silences and guilt tripping. Then came the yelling, the slammed doors, the thrown dishes. I kept telling myself it was just stress, that he'd get better. But the truth? I didn't want to admit I'd invited a monster into my home. By the time I realized who he really was, he'd already cut me off from my friends, canceled my data plan, and taken my debit card. I was trapped in my own house with 3 children, and a man who watched every move I made. And it was only getting worse. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the kids were watching cartoons, and I was folding laundry on the couch. Ethan had been quiet all morning, pacing the kitchen with his coffee, muttering to himself. When I asked if something was wrong, he snapped. "Why are you always looking at me like I'm the problem?" he barked. I froze. I'd learned not to push back when he was like that, but he was already spiraling. He walked over, knocked the laundry basket off the couch. "You don't appreciate anything I do. You think you're some kind of saint for working at a diner and popping out kids?" The kids stopped watching TV. My oldest, Jaden, stood and stepped in front of his siblings. That broke my heart more than anything. I tried calming Ethan down, told him to go cool off. But he stormed into the kitchen and came back with a knife. Nothing fancy, just one of those dull steak knives we barely used. "No one's going anywhere," he said, eyes wild. "You want to leave so bad? Then leave through me." He made us all sit in the living room. Wouldn't let us go to the bathroom alone, wouldn't let me cook or even warm a bottle for the baby. He'd unplugged the router days ago, said we didn't need the internet when real people were around. My phone didn't have service and the landline had been cut last year. We slept on the couch, kids curled against me like frightened kittens. He paced with that knife all night, muttering about betrayal, about how we were all ungrateful. I knew then. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was dangerous, and I had to find a way to get help. On the 3rd day, my hands were shaking from hunger. I'd been feeding the kids whatever scraps I could sneak, dry cereal, an old juice box, half a banana I'd hidden under the crib. Ethan was half asleep on the floor, knife in hand, while the baby cried on my chest. I knew I had one shot. I remembered something. Pizza Hut. It was the only app still installed on my phone that didn't need active cell service to at least function with Wi-Fi. I had no internet, but sometimes a bar or two would sneak through, the old router when Ethan wasn't paying attention. I opened the app. It lagged, froze, then loaded. I added a single pizza to the cart. Pepperoni. Cheap. Something they'd actually deliver without delay. But it was the delivery instructions that mattered. "Please call 911, abusive BF holding me plus kids hostage, bring police, don't make noise." I prayed someone would read it, that they wouldn't think it was a joke or spam. I hit place order and shoved the phone under the couch cushion before Ethan stirred. 30 minutes passed like hours. Every footstep outside made my pulse. Right then the knock, Ethan jumped up, knife in hand. "Who the hell is that?" "Must be the neighbors," I lied. "Probably kids selling something." He opened the door and froze. Red and blue lights flooded the hallway. Police dropped the weapon. Ethan didn't have time to run. The officer tackled him right in the doorway. The knife skittered across the floor. The kids screamed. I screamed. But we were free. The driver had seen the message, he read it, he believed it, and he saved our lives. After the police took Ethan, everything felt eerily quiet. The apartment that once felt like a prison now felt like a vacuum. I held my kids close as paramedics checked us over. No one had visible injuries, just bruised spirits and shaken nerves. We spent the night at a women's shelter. Clean blankets, warm food, and a room that locked from the inside. I watched my babies sleep peacefully for the first time in days. The silence wasn't terrifying anymore. It was healing. The officers told me Ethan had a record, past assaults, even a restraining order filed years ago by another woman. I'd had no idea. He'd kept that part of himself hidden under fake smiles. And home-cooked meals. I felt stupid, angry, but most of all I felt grief. Grief for the woman I'd been before all this. The woman who thought she was finally safe. I reached out to a caseworker the next day. She helped me get an emergency restraining order and connected me with counseling. The Pizza Hut staff even sent a message through the shelter thanking me for being brave, saying they were glad they could help. I cried reading it. Brave. It didn't feel like bravery. It felt like desperation, but maybe sometimes they're the same thing. That night, my oldest asked, "Is Ethan coming back?" I looked him in the eye and said, "No, never again." It wasn't just a promise to him. It was a promise to myself. We were going to build something new. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing in my life ever was, but we were going to be okay. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks or celebration. It feels like eating a full meal without flinching. It feels like sleeping through the night without waking in a panic. It feels like hearing your kids laugh and knowing it's not forced. We moved into a small subsidized apartment 3 weeks later. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, thin walls, old carpet. But it was ours. No yelling, no locked doors, no walking on eggshells. Just life, raw and messy and safe. I started working again, part-time at a community center. The kids went back to school. The baby started sleeping through the night. We kept to ourselves, healed in private, but the scars were there. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps and freeze. The creak of a door still makes my heart jump, and the idea of dating again, I can't even imagine it. Still, I celebrate the little victories. I got a new phone plan. I registered for GED classes. I cook dinner without worrying if someone will throw it across the room. And sometimes when the kids are asleep, I order a small pizza. Just for me. Every time I do, I remember how something as simple as a food app gave me a second chance. To the delivery driver who read that message, thank you. To the dispatcher who believed it, thank you. To every mom out there stuck in silence, there's a way out. It's not easy. It's terrifying. But it's possible. My story isn't a fairy tale. There's no white knight. Just a tired woman who got tired of surviving. Now, I live. One day, one slice at a time. Long before I ever set foot on Pine Hollow Road, my world had already started falling apart. I was 20 years old, halfway through my associate's degree in paralegal studies at the local community college. My plan was simple: study, graduate, land a job at a law office, and slowly work my way out of the trailer park I grew up in. But plans don't mean much when life decides otherwise. When my mom slipped down the stairs at her warehouse job and shattered her hip, everything changed overnight. She couldn't work, couldn't drive. Some days she couldn't even get out of bed without wincing. Medical bills piled up like junk mail, and disability checks barely kept the lights on. I picked up hours wherever I could, mostly nights and weekends, until I finally landed something steady. Delivery driver at Pizza Hut. It wasn't glamorous. Hell, it wasn't even tolerable most nights. Drunk customers, screaming kids, tips that barely covered gas. But it was money, and that was more than we had before. I juggled class in the morning and deliveries at night, sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. There were moments I felt like I was 2 people. Ethan Carter the student, sharp and focused, and Ethan Carter the ghost, drifting between stoplights with greasy pizza boxes and a fraying patience. That's how it was the night I got the call. A late order, last run of the shift around 10:40 p.m. One large pepperoni to a house way out on the edge of town. The address was unfamiliar, Pine Hollow Road. I asked Susan, the night manager, if she'd ever heard of it. Used to be an old subdivision, she said. No one really lives out there anymore. Just deliver it and head home. I wish I had. The drive took longer than expected. The further I got from town, the more the houses thinned out, replaced by weedy lots and sagging mailboxes. Most homes looked abandoned, with plywood over windows and roofs that had given up the fight years ago. I should have turned around. The GPS led me to the end of a long, cracked street where the trees closed in tight and the sky felt heavier somehow. Then I saw it, a white two-story house surprisingly clean and intact, like it hadn't gotten the memo that everything else around it had given up. There was a single porch light on. No cars in the driveway, no signs of life, but the house didn't look empty either. Just off. I double-checked the receipt. Yes, this was the place. 108 Pine Hollow Road. I grabbed the pizza, walked up the steps, and knocked. No answer. I knocked, again, louder this time. Then the door creaked open on its own. I hesitated. My first thought was someone was messing with me. Maybe a prank. Hello? I called out. Pizza delivery. No answer. Just silence so thick it pressed on my chest. Then I heard it. A voice. Faint, like a whisper, but clear as day. Behind you. I spun around, heart hammering. Nothing. Just the porch. The dead lawn. The empty street. Then the screen door slammed shut behind me like a gunshot. I nearly dropped the box. I bolted, down the steps, across the yard, and into my car. I didn't look back. Just slammed the door, locked it, and peeled out of there, so fast the gravel spat from my tires. The rest of the night was a blur. I barely slept. My hands shook long after I clocked out. No one believed me when I told them. But something happened out there. 2 weeks passed. I tried to move on, but the memory clung to me like smoke. That voice, that door. It didn't feel like a prank. It felt personal. I couldn't explain it, not even to myself. I had nightmares, most of them ending with the same words. Behind you, whispered in that same voice. It didn't sound angry, just sad. One Saturday, after a morning shift and 2 cups of gas station coffee, I drove back to Pine Hollow. I told myself it was just curiosity. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe someone lived there after all. I needed closure, or at least a reason to stop looking over my shoulder. But when I got there, the house was unrecognizable. The yard was overgrown. The paint peeled. The porch light was broken. Windows were shattered. The place looked like it had been abandoned for years. I got out cautiously, my shoes crunching the gravel. The front door was still slightly ajar the way I'd left it. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and mold. The pizza box was gone. The living room was empty. No furniture, no lights, nothing except an old picture frame on the floor. Inside was a photo, water-stained and faded. A man, maybe in his 30s, standing beside the same porch I had stood on. He looked happy, tired, but happy. I walked outside and saw an older man a few houses down, sweeping leaves off his porch. I called out to him, "Hey, do you know who used to live here?" He looked up, squinting. "That place?" he said, pointing with his broom. "Yeah, belonged to a guy named James Ellison. Nice fella, worked at the lumber mill. Took his own life 5-6 years back. No one's lived there since." The chill that crept through me wasn't from the wind. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about James Ellison. I looked up old obituaries, scanned public records, even browsed the town's online forums. There wasn't much, just a small obituary, notice and a few sparse comments. Hardworking guy, sad ending. Didn't deserve that. No mention of a haunting, no warning about the house. But there was something about the voice I heard. Behind you. It hadn't sounded threatening. It had sounded like a warning. What if James hadn't died alone? I went back to work the next day, groggy and distracted. I asked Susan about the order from 2 weeks ago, if she remembered who placed it. She frowned. "We don't deliver to that address anymore," she said. "Last driver who went there quit the next day, said it gave him the creeps. Weird thing is, the order came through online, but we couldn't trace the credit card. It was like it never existed." My skin went cold. Later that night, I drove by the house again. I didn't stop this time, just slowed down enough to see that it hadn't changed. But in one of the upstairs windows, I saw something, or someone, standing still just out of reach from the glass. Watching. I drove off without looking back. I started noticing things after that. Whispers when I was alone, lights flickering, in my apartment. A shadow in the mirror that didn't match my movement. Whether it was stress, exhaustion, or something more, I couldn't say. But I knew something had followed me back from that place, and I knew I'd never be the same. Months passed. I quit Pizza Hut, picked up work at the college library, and finally got a part-time internship at a legal office. Things were looking up, at least on the surface, but I never went near Pine Hollow again. Sometimes I dream of that house. I'm back on the porch. The door creaks open, the whisper returns, and I wake up drenched in sweat, convinced someone is in the room with me. I haven't told anyone. Not really. What would I say? That I think I was warned by a ghost? That a dead man tried to protect me from something worse? It sounds crazy, but that's what haunts me the most. Not the memory, not the fear, but the certainty that something is still waiting in that house, waiting for someone else to come knocking. I think about James Ellison sometimes. What drove him to end it? If he saw something out there on Pine Hollow that broke him, or maybe he didn't want to be alone in death. Maybe his whisper wasn't a warning. Maybe it was a plea, a whisper from someone still caught in the dark, still looking behind him, and now so am I. I took the job at Pizza Hut because I needed to save money for community college. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and the tips helped. At first, I didn't think much of the strange vibe at the store. The manager, Rick, was overly friendly, always, complimenting my hair, my clothes, even my laugh. I brushed it off. I'd worked in food service before. I knew people could be weird, but something felt off. Rick only hired girls. No guys in the front. If a guy applied, he'd say we were fully staffed. I noticed it after a few weeks. We were all young, mostly high school or early college-aged. Rick was in his 40s. He'd linger around the register when we took orders, asking us to smile more. Sometimes he'd touch our shoulders when we clocked in or stood too close when checking orders. It was subtle at first. You start to question yourself, am I overreacting? One day he told me I was his favorite girl because I knew how to keep quiet and follow directions. It made my skin crawl, but I laughed it off. I needed the job. The others didn't say much. A few had quit suddenly. No notice, just gone. One girl, Maria, pulled me aside once and said, "Don't ever stay here alone with him. Ever." She wouldn't explain. I thought she was being dramatic. Then came the night I stayed late to close with Rick. It was a Friday night and the shift was chaos. Back-to-back orders, short staff, cranky customers. When 11 p.m. rolled around, I was wiped. Everyone else had left and Rick said he'd help me close. I told myself it was fine. I'd done this a few times, and nothing happened. Maybe I was just paranoid. He kept hovering while I swept and wiped down the salad bar. When I tried to start mopping the kitchen, he blocked the hallway and said, "Actually, can you clean the women's restroom first? It's been getting real nasty." I hesitated. I'd never cleaned it solo before. He saw the hesitation and smiled too wide. "Come on, you're not scared, are you?" I grabbed gloves and headed in. I kept the door open out of instinct. As I started scrubbing the sink, I heard it Click. The door shut. Then I heard the lock. I froze. My heart started pounding as footsteps approached behind me. Rick's voice was low. "You know, you're really beautiful when you're quiet." I turned, backing toward the stall. "Let me out." He stepped closer. "Why are you acting like this? I've been nothing but good to you." I reached for the mop handle, trying to keep something between us. My hands were shaking. Then he lunged. I screamed, fought, swung the mop as hard as I could and hit him in the arm. He cursed, and I bolted past him as he stumbled. My hands fumbled at the lock. I yanked the door open and ran, through the kitchen, out the back exit, across the parking lot, into the dark. I didn't stop until I was home. When I burst through, the front door crying, my mom jumped off the couch. I couldn't get the words out fast enough. My dad just kept asking, "Who? What happened? Where's this guy now?" They listened. No judgment, no disbelief, just concern and rage. The next morning, we went straight to the police. I gave a full statement, shaking through every word. The detective asked for my uniform, my phone, anything with messages or calls. I told them about the other girls, the weird hiring, the sudden resignations. They took it seriously. Apparently, I wasn't the first. 2 former employees had filed complaints, but there hadn't been enough evidence. One was underage, another had moved out of state. But now, with my statement, they had more to work with. The bruises on my arms, the restaurant's camera footage showing him following me into the restroom, it was enough. They arrested Rick within 48 hours. I didn't go to work that day or ever again. He was charged with attempted assault and unlawful confinement. The trial took months, but I testified. So did 2 other girls who came forward after hearing my story. In the courtroom, he wouldn't look at me. He ended up taking a plea deal, 4 years in prison, plus mandatory registration. It wasn't long enough, but it was something. I wish I could say that life went back to normal after that. It didn't. I started flinching at sudden sounds. I stopped wearing my Pizza Hut shirt. It gave me chills. I deleted the app from my phone. I even changed my phone number after getting a weird text from an unknown number that just said, "Still think about that night." My parents begged me to go to therapy. I went once, then stopped. I couldn't handle the way it made me feel, vulnerable all over again. But over time, I started healing in little pieces. I got a job at a bookstore. Quiet, safe, no closed kitchens or back exits. I made friends who didn't just smile. They asked real questions and gave real support. I started writing again. Journaling, processing. I don't blame myself anymore. For a while, I hated that I didn't fight harder, scream louder. But trauma does strange things. Your body freezes. You do what you have to do to survive. And I did survive. I still walk past that Pizza Hut sometimes. It's under new management now. Fresh paint, new sign, but I never go in. I can't. I shared my story online a year after it happened, not for sympathy, but for the girl working late in some fast food place right now, wondering if the weird feeling in her gut means anything. It does. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Trust that instinct. Since sharing, I've gotten messages from women all over, some thanking me, others sharing their own stories. I even spoke at a local school once about workplace safety and boundaries. It felt strange at first to revisit, but there's strength in telling the truth. I've learned that silence only protects the abuser. Rick thought I'd stay quiet, thought no one would believe me. He was wrong. I won't ever work in food service again, that world's behind me. But I carry the lesson with me everywhere. You have the right to feel safe at work. You have the right to be heard. And I'll keep telling my story for every girl who still feels trapped behind locked doors. Because we're not just survivors, we're witnesses, and witnesses speak. I never expected much from Pizza Hut. Honestly, I thought it'd be a simple gig. Take orders, box pizzas, sweep the floors, and clock out. I was 20, just trying to stay afloat after community college didn't pan out. Rent wasn't going to pay itself, and Pizza Hut was hiring, no experience required. That was enough. The first couple weeks were fine. The crew was mostly high school kids and tired adults juggling second jobs. It was quiet work, repetitive, sure, but peaceful. That's when Victor started. He came in like a hurricane. Tall, lanky, with a buzz cut and a voice that never seemed to drop below a shout. First day, he introduced himself like we were best friends from another life. "Yo, Ethan, right? You and me are gonna run this place." He laughed like he'd cracked the code of the universe. I chuckled awkwardly, not sure what to make of him. Victor worked hard, I'll give him that. Fast on the line, always eager to pick up shifts. But there was something off, too intense, too interested. He'd ask weird personal questions like if I lived alone or if my parents were cool with people staying over, stuff that had nothing to do with work. One night while we were folding boxes in the back, he leaned in and said, "You ever feel like no one really sees you? Like you could just disappear and no one would notice?" He laughed after, but there was no humor in his eyes. I brushed it off. Everyone has bad days, I figured. Maybe he was just lonely. Still, something about the way he looked at me that night stuck with me. Like he was waiting. For what, I didn't know. But I was about to find out. It was a Friday night and we were closing together. Victor leaned on the counter, eyeing the empty lobby like he was plotting something. "You doing anything?"
Tomorrow?
He asked, wiping his hands on a towel that didn't look clean. "Got a couple of friends coming over. You should swing by. We'll get beers, maybe watch some old war movies." I shrugged. "I've got plans, man. Rain check." He frowned, then smiled too fast. Sure, another time." The next few days, he didn't let it go. Every break, every lull in the dinner rush, he brought it up again. "You'd like my place. Real chill vibe. I got blackout curtains, feels like a bunker." I started making up excuses. Family stuff, fake dentist appointments, whatever I could think of. But the questions kept coming. One night, he waited for me outside, leaning against the hood of his car, arms crossed like some character from a low-budget crime show. "Ride home?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm good. Bus is fine." "You always take the bus?" That weird feeling came back, like my skin knew something before my brain did. "Yeah," I said, stepping past him. He didn't follow, but he didn't look away either. That night I got a text from an unknown number. "You don't trust easy, I respect that." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The air around me had shifted. I started checking behind me when I walked home. My apartment felt smaller. The lock on my door felt weaker. And Victor? He smiled at me like nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it. By week 6, I dreaded clocking in. Victor had become a permanent shadow, always hovering nearby. He'd sneak up on me mid-shift just to whisper something bizarre. Quotes from horror movies, lines about isolation, things that made my stomach knot. Once he told me, "People think monsters are loud, but the worst ones are quiet. Patient." Laughed nervously, pretending I didn't hear him right. "You've been watching too many movies, man." He grinned. "Maybe." He started showing up on my days off. Just hanging around the strip mall, claiming he was waiting on a buddy. Always seemed surprised to bump into me. Once he followed me into the gas station across the street, buying a soda he didn't open, just so he could walk beside me. I told my manager Tasha about it. She nodded, said she'd keep an eye, but nothing changed. Maybe it was my fault. I downplayed it. Didn't want to be dramatic, didn't want to sound paranoid. Then came the night we were short-staffed. Just me and Victor. The dining area was closed, the last delivery was out, and it was past 11. I was wiping down the soda fountain when he leaned against the counter beside me. "You ever think about starting over? New name, new place, just disappear?" I swallowed. Why would I want to do that? He stared at me for a beat too long. I think about it a lot. I finished my shift in silence, left through the back door, and jogged the whole way home. My hands were shaking. My legs didn't stop until I double-locked my apartment door. That night I didn't sleep. Not really. Every creak, every passing car, I imagined Victor's face in the dark. It happened a week later. The night I still see in flashes. I was alone again, closing on a Thursday. Victor wasn't on the schedule. I felt relief, even a little stupid for being so wound up. I turned up the music, mopped the floors, and started locking up. The last thing I had to do was clean the bathroom. I propped the door open, wheeled the cart inside, and started wiping the sinks. That's when I heard the stall door creak open. "Store's closed," I said, assuming a customer had snuck in before we locked the front. Silence. Then, Victor stepped out. I dropped the rag. "What the hell? How did you get in?" He just smiled. "You left the side door cracked, should be more careful." I took a step back, my chest tightened. "You can't be here, man, you need to leave." His smile dropped. "Why are you scared of me, Ethan? I've never done anything to you." My heart was pounding. "Just go." He moved faster than I thought possible, grabbed me by the collar, slammed me against the wall. His forearm pressed into my throat. "I'm not the bad guy," he whispered, his breath sour with something chemical. "You just don't listen." I clawed at his arm, kicked wildly. My vision blurred. Then he let go. I fell to the ground, coughing, gasping. Victor stood over me. "See? You're not ready for the world. People like you break easy." He turned and walked out like nothing had happened. I locked the doors, called Tasha. She told me to go home. She'd report it, she said. File a complaint. But no cameras, no witnesses. Nothing came of it. I never went back. I quit the next morning. Left a voicemail and dropped my uniform in the drop box behind the store. I never set foot in there again. For weeks, I jumped at every noise. Every shadow felt like a threat. I changed my number, blocked every known contact. I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell friends. What would I even say? Victor never got arrested. He never even got fired, as far as I know. A few weeks later, I heard from a former coworker that he just stopped showing up. Vanished. No warning. And part of me was glad. But part of me still looks over my shoulder. I don't trust silence the way I used to. I flinch when a stranger stares too long. I cross the street when footsteps follow too close behind me. I wish I had some clean ending. Victor behind bars, justice served. But real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes people like him just slip through the cracks and the rest of us carry the bruises in our heads. The scariest thing isn't that Victor hurt me, it's that he could have done worse. And no one would have believed me until it was too late. I always thought of Pizza Hut as a stepping stone, something temporary while I figured out what I really wanted to do. The pay wasn't great, the hours were long, and the grease smell stuck to your clothes no matter how many times you washed them. Still, I showed up. 5 nights a week, sometimes 6, I stood behind the counter with a fake smile and aching feet, dealing with the rush of customers who came in hungry, tired, or just angry at the world. Most nights blended together. People came in, ordered, complained if we were out of breadsticks, and left. But one night changed everything. It was a Wednesday, slow at first. Just me and Jaden, my coworker who'd been there longer than anyone. He was a chill guy, always playing old-school hip-hop through the backroom speaker, always ready to take over if a customer got too heated. That night, he was restocking the salad bar while I handled front counter. That's when he walked in. Tall, mid-40s maybe, wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit with grease-stained boots. He had this stare that didn't blink enough. No hello, no eye contact, just slammed his hands on the counter and barked out a ridiculously complex order. Custom sauce, extra this, light that, not too crispy or I'll know. He kept repeating that. I tried to explain that some of what he wanted wasn't doable. We can't do half Alfredo, half marinara. Those cook at different rates. Leaned in. You saying no to a customer? I smiled nervously. No, sir. Just trying to explain how our ovens work. He grunted and walked off to wait. I thought that was the end of it. I had no idea how wrong I was. The guy picked up his pizza 15 minutes later. Didn't say a word. He opened the box, looked inside and sneered. "Better not be burnt," he muttered, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. Jaden and I just kept our heads down, hoping he'd leave. He did. For a while. We were cleaning up, getting ready to close around 10. Jaden was taking out the trash when the door slammed open. That same guy stormed in, holding a metal wrench the size of my forearm. "You think this is funny?" he screamed. My stomach dropped. I was frozen behind the counter. Jaden walked back in from the kitchen, saw the guy, and immediately stepped between us. "Yo, man, you need to leave right now." The man's face was red, spit flying as he shouted, "You think I don't know when people are messing with me? You burned the crust on purpose? You think I'm stupid?" I could barely move. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I reached under the register where the panic button was, but my fingers were shaking too much to find it. Jaden stood tall. "Back off, man. There are cameras all over this place." "I don't give a damn about your cameras." The guy roared and raised the wrench. Jaden didn't flinch. "Get out before you do something you can't undo." For a second, the guy hesitated. Then he turned and stormed out. We both exhaled, but relief didn't last long. Moments later, headlights filled the front window as the guy's car screeched across the lot. Tires squealed. He aimed straight at the front doors. We ran. The sound of tires tearing across asphalt is something I'll never forget. It's like thunder mixed with panic. Jaden and I barely made it behind the prep counter before we heard the sickening thud of the car hitting the front doors. Glass shattered everywhere. It was surreal. Like something from a movie. I remember thinking, is this really happening? Over a pizza? He didn't break through entirely. The steel frame held, thank God, but the doors bowed inward, spider-webbed with cracks. The guy threw the car in reverse, then revved it forward again like he was trying to finish the job. Jaden grabbed the phone and called 911, while I peeked around the fryer station, heart still thumping. The guy sat in the driver's seat, eyes wild, yelling things we couldn't hear through the glass. Then, as suddenly as he came, he sped off into the night. Cops showed up 10 minutes later. It felt like forever. We gave our statements, showed them the footage, clear as day, his face, his plate number, everything. The officers told us we were lucky. If those doors hadn't held, I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. I replayed it over and over. What if Jaden hadn't been there? What if I'd said the wrong thing? What if he had gotten inside? The next morning, corporate sent in maintenance. We had to open the store again by lunch. It was like nothing had happened, except something had, and I was changed. They arrested him 2 days later. Turns out he'd been arrested before, for assault, threats, even trying to run someone off the road back in 18. But nothing ever stuck long. Always got out on probation or technicalities. This time, the footage helped. Multiple angles. His voice, his face, the wrench in hand. He was charged with aggravated assault, attempted vehicular assault, destruction of property. I followed the case when I could, but most of it felt like noise. What mattered to me was that he couldn't come back. Still, the fear didn't just disappear. Every time a man came in angry, I tensed. Every time the door slammed too hard, I flinched. I started carrying pepper spray. Jaden tried to laugh it off like it was just another crazy customer story, but I could tell it shook him too. I went home that night after the police told us he was in custody and sat at the edge of my bed for a long time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was just still, numb. People underestimate how fragile a normal night can be, how close the line is between inconvenience and terror, between a burnt pizza and a potential tragedy. My manager offered me a few days off. I didn't take them. I don't know why. Maybe pride, maybe fear of what sitting still would make me feel. I just wanted to go back to routine, to pretend I was okay. But something in me had shifted. That job used to feel temporary. Now it felt like a war zone. A few weeks later, I was back to my regular rhythm. Orders, cleanup, small talk with regulars. But it wasn't the same. The store still had a faint crack across the glass doors. No matter how much they replaced, a reminder always lingered. Jaden eventually quit. Said he needed something calmer. I didn't blame him. As for me, I stayed. It's strange. Most people think the job's about food. But what I learned is that working retail or food service means stepping into people's lives for 5 chaotic minutes at a time. Some are kind, some are rude, and some are dangerous. I've had therapy since. Just a few sessions, enough to put some words to the unease I carried. The counselor said what I experienced was acute trauma, that it would pass. I don't know if it ever fully will, but I've learned to breathe again, learned to stand taller behind that counter. Sometimes new hires ask me, "What's the craziest thing that's happened here?" I usually just smile and say, "You don't want to know," but inside I remember every second. And every time a customer gets mad about ranch dressing or a late delivery, I remember that night. That wrench, that car, that feeling of not knowing if I'd ever go home again. But I did, and I'm still here, and that matters. I'd been delivering pizzas for nearly a decade in our sleepy little town. The streets were familiar, the houses mostly friendly, and the job, while not glamorous, paid the bills. Most nights were uneventful, just me, my car, and the comforting aroma of pepperoni and melted cheese. That evening started like any other. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet streets. I was halfway through my shift when an order came in, a large pepperoni pizza to be delivered, to an address on the outskirts of town. The location was unfamiliar, nestled near the woods where the houses were sparse and the streetlights even sparser. I hesitated for a moment, noting the oddity of the order. The address wasn't in our usual delivery zone, but the system had accepted it. Shrugging off the unease, I grabbed the pizza, noted the directions, and set off into the night. The drive was uneventful until I turned onto the gravel road leading to the house. Tall trees lined the path, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The house at the end was old, its paint peeling and windows dark. I parked, grabbed the pizza, and approached the front door, the wooden steps creaking under my weight. I knocked, the sound echoing into the still night. Moments later, the porch light flickered on, and the door creaked open. A man stood there, his face partially obscured by shadows. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something about him felt off. "Pizza delivery," I said, forcing a smile. The man nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on me. "Right on time," he murmured, stepping aside. "Come in." I hesitated. Company policy was clear: never enter a customer's home. "I can hand it to you here," I replied, holding out the box. He stared at me for a moment before reaching out to take the pizza. As he did, I heard a faint, muffled sound from inside the house. A cry? My ears perked up and I glanced past him into the dimly lit hallway. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled again, wider this time. "Just the TV," he said, stepping back and beginning to close the door. But before it shut completely, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure, bound and gagged, struggling, in the shadows. Panic surged through me. I turned and hurried back to my car, fumbling with the keys. Behind me, I heard the door swing open, followed by rapid footsteps. "Wait!" the man shouted. I didn't look back. I dove into the driver's seat, slammed the door shut, and locked it. He reached the car just as I started the engine pounding on the window. His face was twisted in anger, the earlier smile gone. I reversed out of the driveway, tires kicking up gravel, and sped down the road, heart pounding. Back at the restaurant, I called the police, recounting the entire incident. They took my statement seriously, dispatching officers to the address immediately. I waited, nerves frayed, replaying the events over and over in my mind. An hour later, an officer called to inform me that they had found a woman in the basement, bound and terrified. She had been missing for days, reported by her family. The man now in custody had a history of violent behavior. The realization hit me hard. Had I not noticed the signs, had I dismissed the muffled cry, she might have remained captive, or worse. The weight of that thought settled heavily on my shoulders. The following days were a blur of interviews and statements. The local news picked up the story, dubbing me a hero. But I didn't feel like one. I felt shaken, vulnerable, and deeply unsettled. I took a leave of absence from work, needing time to process everything. The familiar streets now felt different, shadows lurking where there were none before. In the quiet of my apartment, I found myself reflecting on the incident. The routine I had grown so accustomed to had been shattered, replaced by a newfound awareness of the dangers that could lurk behind any door. I thought about the woman, her ordeal, and the strength it must have taken to survive. I hoped she was receiving the care and support she needed. I also thought about the man, the facade he had maintained, the evil he had hidden behind a smile. It was a stark reminder that appearances could be deceiving. The experience changed me. I became more cautious, more observant. I realized the importance of trusting my instincts, of speaking up when something felt wrong. I decided to share my story, hoping it would encourage others to stay vigilant, to trust their gut feelings, and to act when something seemed amiss. Months passed, and life slowly returned to a new normal. I returned to work, but with a different perspective. Each delivery was approached with caution. Each interaction weighed carefully. The community's response was overwhelming. Customers expressed gratitude, colleagues offered support, and even strangers reached out with words of encouragement. I continued to share my experience, speaking at local events and schools, emphasizing the importance of awareness and action. If my story could prevent even one tragedy, it was worth reliving the trauma. The memory of that night remains vivid, a constant reminder of the hidden dangers that can exist in the most ordinary settings. But it also serves as a testament to the power of intuition, the importance of vigilance, and the impact one person can have by choosing to act. I may have been just a pizza delivery driver, but that night, I became something more. A lifeline, a witness, a voice for someone who couldn't speak. Back then, I never imagined that working at Pizza Hut would turn into something much bigger than just a job. I was fresh out of high school, trying to find my place in the world. The steady paycheck and routine felt like a lifeline during a time when everything else seemed uncertain. I liked the buzz of the kitchen, the sizzle of cheese melting, and the way the hot ovens filled the air with that familiar greasy smell. It was honest work. And honestly, I needed honest work. At first, the shifts gave me structure. I clocked in, tossed dough, topped pizzas, and handed them out with a smile. I liked the people I worked with, and the steady rhythm of the job helped me keep my head clear. But underneath the surface, I was struggling with my own battles. Food had always been my comfort, but it wasn't just comfort anymore. I was fighting a quiet, creeping addiction to eating. Not just eating, but binging on the very thing I helped make. I didn't realize how much I relied on food until that brutal tax season hit. My mom was sick, bills were piling up, and the pressure at work grew heavier. The stress crushed me, and pizza became my escape. After a long day, I'd sit in my small apartment, eat slice after slice, telling myself I deserved it. It was the only thing that made me feel okay. I thought I had control. I thought it was just a phase. But little by little, the habit took over, and the lines between work and life blurred. I didn't notice how my health was slipping, how I was retreating from everyone except the glowing oven and the greasy cardboard boxes. The days started to blend together. I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach and find myself counting down hours until my next shift. That's when I could be near the pizza, the one thing I felt I could depend on. I stopped cooking real meals at home. Pizza was easier, cheaper, and gave me that fleeting sense of comfort. But inside, I felt hollow, tired, and trapped. My coworkers noticed. Some joked about my weight gain. Others seemed concerned, but said nothing. I brushed off their comments, slipping deeper into my routine. I wasn't just eating pizza, I was living off it. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, it was all the same greasy slices, night after night. The stress didn't ease either. The manager kept piling on more hours, and the tax season dragged on with no relief. I started hearing whispers about strange things happening during deliveries, stuff I didn't want to believe. At first, I thought it was just workplace gossip. But then, there was Jeremy. Jeremy was a delivery driver who had died in a car accident 2 years before I started. I remembered hearing about it. He was young, reckless, and gone too soon. One night after closing, I was locking up when I heard the delivery doorbell ring. I opened it and saw a familiar face, Jeremy's. He smiled that crooked, tired grin, handed me an order, and disappeared before I could say anything. My heart slammed in my chest and I shut the door quickly. I convinced myself it was a trick of the light or my stressed-out mind playing games. But things only got weirder from there. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Boxes showed up at my apartment with no memory of ordering them. The taste of the pizza felt wrong, metallic and stale. At work, I started noticing unsanitary conditions I had never seen before. Moldy cheese, dirty ovens, and unwashed utensils. The place was falling apart, and no one seemed to care. Jeremy's appearances haunted me. Sometimes I'd see him standing outside the store watching. Other times I'd catch glimpses of him in the rearview mirror during deliveries. I told myself it was paranoia, fueled by exhaustion and my own spiraling addiction. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. My health was deteriorating fast. I felt weak, out of breath after climbing a single flight of stairs, and my clothes no longer fit. The isolation was suffocating. I stopped answering calls, stopped seeing friends. The pizza was all I had left. One night, after a particularly bad shift, I found a secret stash behind the dumpster. Spoiled food, expired ingredients, and empty bottles. It hit me hard. This wasn't just a personal battle anymore. This was dangerous. I knew I couldn't keep living in denial. That night was a turning point. I called in sick the next day, something I hadn't done in months. I finally let myself rest. I reached out to a local health inspector and told them everything. The unsafe conditions, the strange deliveries, and the ghostly sightings of Jeremy. The inspector took my concerns seriously. They visited the store unannounced. What they found was worse than I imagined. Vermin infestation, spoiled food, broken equipment. The restaurant was immediately shut down. I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that the nightmare was ending, guilt for having ignored the signs for so long. At home, I started to seek help for my addiction. I talked to a counselor, joined a support group, and slowly began to rebuild a healthier relationship with food. The road wasn't easy, and there were days I wanted to give up. But each step forward was a victory. I realized that facing my fears, the fear of losing my job, the fear of being alone, the fear of failure, was the only way to truly reclaim my life. It was scary but necessary. It's been a year since that closure, and my life looks different now. I'm not cured. Addiction isn't a simple fix, but I'm learning to live with it instead of letting it control me. I cook my own meals, eat with friends, and even went back to school part-time to study nutrition. Sometimes I think about Jeremy. I don't know if he was real or just a hallucination born of stress and guilt. But in a way, he was a wake-up call. The ghost was a reminder that ignoring problems doesn't make them disappear. I still have moments of weakness, and the past isn't something I forget. But I've learned to listen to myself, to reach out before I fall too far. This story isn't about pizza or ghosts. It's about survival, about finding hope in the darkest places. If you're fighting your own battles, whatever they are, I want you to know it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to face your fears, because that's how you find your way back. I started working as a pizza delivery driver for Pizza Hut right after high school. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and I liked the freedom of the road. The job was mostly straightforward: pick up the order, deliver it, collect the cash or card, and head back. Simple. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation that felt like it was straight out of a horror movie. Friday nights were the busiest. The rush never stopped from around 6 until late. That night was no different. The store was packed, orders flying in nonstop. I was running deliveries back to back, adrenaline keeping me sharp despite the fatigue. Then my manager handed me a slip for a medium pepperoni pizza, something normal, nothing out of the ordinary. What caught my eye was the delivery address. It was for another Pizza Hut just a few miles down the road. I double-checked the ticket, then the screen. Yeah, it said exactly the same. I thought maybe a mistake. A customer ordering from the wrong place, or maybe a prank. Still, the manager shrugged and told me to just go with it. So I grabbed the pizza and headed over. Pulling up to the other Pizza Hut, I figured I'd explain the weird order. But when I walked in, the employees looked just as confused as I was. They hadn't placed any order and hadn't called for any delivery. Something didn't add up. I stepped outside the store, feeling a little off. The night was quiet except for distant cars and the hum of the streetlights. That's when I heard it. A voice calling from the edge of the woods next to the parking lot. "Hey, you got my pizza?" A man shouted. I wasn't sure if I should answer. It sounded a little desperate, but I was curious and honestly a bit cautious. I called back, "Yeah, that's me. Where are you?" "Just come down the path," he said, voice low but urgent. Something about the way he spoke sent a chill down my spine. But I grabbed the pizza box and followed the narrow dirt trail into the woods. The trees closed in around me, shadows flickering in the flashlight from my phone. My heart pounded. Suddenly I saw another figure. A man perched high in a tree, wearing a ski mask. His eyes glinted under the moonlight. I froze. The man on the ground took the pizza, smiled, and said, "You want a tip?" I shook my head quickly, stepping back. "Nah, I gotta get going." I started backing away, the feeling that something was very wrong growing stronger with every step. I didn't waste a second. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my keys and unlocked the car. I sat there for a moment, catching my breath and trying to process what had just happened. The woods felt ominous, like I'd walked into something dangerous without realizing it. I drove back to my Pizza Hut, heart still racing. I told the manager everything, the wrong order, the woods, the guy in the mask. At first, he looked skeptical, but after I insisted, he told me to call the police. I did. They arrived within minutes, a team of officers combing the area near the woods. I stood by, nervously watching as they searched deeper among the trees and underbrush. My stomach twisted. Later that night, the police found her. A woman who'd been reported missing, trapped nearby. She was scared and shaken, but alive. The man I had seen was the one who had abducted her. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. What had started as a weird, confusing delivery had turned into something terrifyingly real. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The man's masked face, the woman's scared eyes, the way the woods swallowed me up. I felt a mix of guilt and relief. Guilt for walking into that situation, relief for making it out safely and helping catch a dangerous criminal. I replayed the moment over and over in my head, wondering if I could have done more, or if I'd been foolish to follow the guy into the woods. But deep down, I knew I had to trust my instincts. After that, my job felt different. Every delivery carried a new weight. I started paying more attention to details, the addresses, the people, the surroundings. I wasn't just delivering pizza anymore. I was responsible for my safety. My coworkers listened to the story with a mix of disbelief and concern. Some told me to quit. Others said I was brave. I wasn't sure which was true. All I knew was I had learned something important. Not every order is what it seems. It's been months since that night, but the memory still lingers. I still deliver pizzas, but I'm more cautious, more aware. I trust my gut like never before. That experience changed me. It showed me how quickly things can go sideways, how danger can hide in the most ordinary places. It taught me the importance of speaking up, trusting your instincts, and never ignoring that little voice inside that says, something's not right. I'm sharing this story because sometimes the scariest moments come when you least expect them, and it's okay to be afraid. But it's also okay to be brave. You don't have to be a hero, just smart and alert. If you ever find yourself in a weird or unsafe situation, don't hesitate to walk away and get help. It could save your life or someone else's. High school nights at my house were usually pretty chill, especially when my parents were out of town. My older sister Emily and I often took advantage of their absence to stay up late, watch movies, and order pizza. It was a simple routine. One, that felt like a secret little rebellion, but really just comfort food and sister bonding. One Friday night, after Emily finished her homework, we decided to order from the local pizza joint down the street. Nothing fancy, just a couple of large pizzas and some breadsticks. I was hanging out in the living room scrolling through my phone while Emily paced by the window, waiting for the delivery guy. When the doorbell rang, Emily opened the door with a bright smile that quickly faded into a guarded look. I didn't think much of it at first, but then she whispered my name and said, "That's the delivery driver who creeped me out a few weeks ago." I raised an eyebrow, curious. Emily explained that during a previous delivery, the guy had been acting weird, hovering too close, making uncomfortable small talk, and glancing around the house like he was trying to see inside. She said it made her uneasy enough that she refused to order from that place again. I hadn't noticed anything unusual, but after seeing the look on Emily's face, I knew something was off. That night was supposed to be normal, but it wasn't going to stay that way. We ate the pizza quietly, both of us distracted by what Emily had told me. The night was dark outside, and the house felt unusually quiet with just the two of us. After the dishes were cleared, Emily locked the door and double-checked the windows. "Better safe than sorry," she said. About an hour later, just as we were settling back in, the doorbell rang again. My heart jumped. Emily looked at me, eyes wide and tense. She whispered, "Don't open it." I peeked through the peephole and saw the same delivery driver standing there, holding a small, suspicious-looking paper bag. He smiled nervously and said, "Hey, I got a free brownie here for your sister. Thought she might want it." Something about the way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. Emily stayed silent but shook her head firmly. "No thanks," she called through the door. The driver's smile twisted, his tone shifting. "Come on, I know you're home alone. Just take it. No one has to know." I could see the anger bubbling beneath his words. It wasn't just a delivery guy anymore. He was threatening us, trying to push boundaries we weren't willing to cross. My mind raced as I weighed what to do next. Emily looked frozen, scared, but quiet. I realized I had to step in, even though I felt terrified inside. Opened the door just a crack and said in a firm voice, trying to sound tougher than I felt, "Listen, man, you're creeping us out. Back off or I'm calling the cops." He sneered, trying to intimidate me, but I held my ground. "You don't want to mess with us," I added, hoping my bluff would work. For a moment, the tension hung thick in the air. Then the driver's face twisted with frustration. "Fine," he spat and turned to leave, muttering under his breath. I quickly shut and locked the door. Emily and I didn't say much, but the relief was palpable. We grabbed our phones, and I dialed 911, telling the dispatcher what had happened. That night, the fear settled deep in my chest, but so did a sense of empowerment. We hadn't let him win. The police arrived a short time later, taking our statements and reassuring us they would investigate. They promised to check the driver's history and keep an eye on the neighborhood. The next day, I called the pizza place to report the incident, insisting they take it seriously. The manager apologized and said they would handle it immediately. A few days later, we heard the driver was fired. It felt like justice, but the memory stuck with me longer than I expected. I kept thinking about how easily a simple pizza delivery could have turned dangerous. Emily and I started being more cautious, double-checking who was at the door and never opening it fully without knowing exactly who was there. Looking back, that night taught me a lot about boundaries and trusting your instincts. It's easy to think that something like a pizza delivery is harmless, just part of everyday life. But sometimes danger hides where you least expect it. I'm glad I stood up for my sister and myself. It wasn't about being tough or brave. It was about recognizing a threat and acting on it. Knowing when to say no, when to protect yourself, and when to call for help. Now, whenever I hear a knock or a doorbell, I'm more aware. Not just because of that night, but because it reminds me how important it is to be alert and safe. And to anyone reading this, don't ignore those little gut feelings. They could save your life. I never thought delivering pizzas would be this stressful. When I took the job at Tony's Pizza, I figured it would be straightforward. Pick up the order, drive a bit, drop it off, get tipped, repeat. But that night, something felt different from the get-go. It was one of those Friday nights when the orders kept flooding in, the phones ringing off the hook and the drivers scrambling to keep up. I was new to this route, still getting familiar with the city's map and the odd neighborhoods on the outskirts. The streets I was used to delivering in were decent. Families, well-lit houses, friendly faces. But tonight's big order was for a part of town that made my stomach twist the moment I saw the address pop up on my screen. The neighborhood was rough, boarded-up windows peeling paint, broken streetlights flickering ominously. I could already feel the tension building inside me. I kept telling myself, it's just a pizza delivery, nothing more. I didn't want to let the nervousness win. After all, I'd done deliveries before, and always managed to get through. I grabbed the medium pepperoni and headed out, hoping the address was a mistake or maybe just an old building that had been fixed up. I tried to focus on the radio and the warm box on my lap, but my eyes kept scanning the dark streets. When I pulled up, the house looked worse up close. Cracked steps, a rusted mailbox hanging crooked. The street was silent except for the hum of distant traffic. I hesitated for a second, then grabbed the pizza and knocked on the door, telling myself this was just part of the job. But deep down, I wished I could have sent someone else. I knocked again, a little harder this time. No answer, but I could hear something inside, a shuffling like someone moving around. My heart started beating faster. "Hello?" I called out. No reply. Just the sound of movement behind the door. I wasn't sure if I should wait or leave. The usual rules at Tony's were clear. If the customer didn't answer, you called back to the store, but the phone just kept ringing and ringing with no answer. Something didn't feel right. Then the door creaked open, and a man appeared in the dim light, scruffy, eyes darting, smelling faintly of something sour. Before I could say anything, he grabbed my arm roughly and pulled me closer. The sudden force made me freeze for a split second, but panic kicked in fast. I struggled, trying to break free, but his grip tightened. "Come on inside," he growled, his voice low and threatening. My mind screamed to run, but I felt paralyzed for a moment, caught between fear and shock. I managed to jerk my arm free, dropping the pizza on the porch as I stumbled back. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I bolted to my car like my life depended on it because honestly, it did. I locked the doors behind me and fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I called 911, barely able to get the words out. The dispatcher told me to stay in the car until officers arrived. My eyes didn't leave the house as I sat there, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The police showed up in minutes, flashing lights cutting through the night. I gave them my statement, still shaky but relieved to be safe. They told me the man had a record of assaulting delivery drivers and had been on probation. Apparently, he was known for luring workers inside under the pretense of deliveries, then attacking them. Hearing that sent chills down my spine. I thought about how close I'd come to being another victim. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't escaped? What if I'd hesitated for a second too long? The officers thanked me for calling it in, quickly saying it helped them catch him before he could hurt anyone else. Tony, my manager, was worried but proud of how I handled things. They gave me a few days off to calm down, and during that time I started thinking about how dangerous this job could be. It wasn't just about late nights or long drives. It was about being alert, trusting your gut, and knowing when to walk away. After the incident, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. I began paying more attention during deliveries, taking note of the neighborhoods, the houses, and the people around me. I started sharing my experience with other drivers, warning them about that area and reminding them to always be cautious. The job suddenly felt heavier. Delivering pizza wasn't just a way to make money anymore, it was a responsibility. I realized that many people don't think about the risks delivery drivers take just to bring them a meal. There's a real danger, especially when you're out alone at night in unfamiliar places. I also learned the value of trusting instincts. That uneasy feeling I had when I saw the address in the house wasn't just in my head. It was a warning. I wish I had listened to it a bit more, but I'm grateful I listened enough to get away. I'm still delivering pizzas, but now I'm more careful. I don't ignore the red flags or push past my gut feelings. If a place looks sketchy or the vibe feels off, I call it in, ask for backup, or refuse the delivery if necessary. It's better to lose a tip than to risk your safety. This experience taught me a harsh but important lesson. In jobs like this, vigilance isn't optional. It's survival. Being polite and professional matters, but so does protecting yourself. Sometimes the most ordinary things, like dropping off a pizza, can turn into dangerous encounters, and you have to be ready. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. Always trust your instincts, keep your phone close, and never hesitate to call for help. Your safety is worth more than any delivery or dollar. In everyday jobs that seem routine, dangers can unexpectedly appear. It's crucial to stay alert, trust your gut, and prioritize your safety over convenience or money. Never underestimate your instincts. They can be the difference between escaping harm and becoming a victim.